Just now, Netflix quietly pulled the plug on Meghan Markle's show after shockingly low views. And what insiders are saying next could change everything. What was once promoted as Meghan Markle's defining Hollywood comeback has now reportedly collapsed behind closed doors, leaving industry insiders stunned and the Sussex brand facing its most serious credibility crisis yet. According to multiple sources familiar with Netflix's internal decision-making, the streaming giant has quietly canceled Meghan Markle's show after viewership numbers failed to meet even the platform's revised expectations. While no official announcement was made, the absence of renewal discussions, the sudden halt in promotional support, and the quiet removal of the series from internal priority lists have made one thing increasingly clear: Netflix has moved on. For Meghan Markle, this moment is more than a professional disappointment. It is being described by insiders as a turning point, one that exposes a widening gap between media hype and actual audience behavior. A gap Netflix executives can no longer justify. When the show was first conceived, it was pitched internally as a carefully crafted reinvention. Meghan would step away from royal controversy and reintroduce herself as a polished, aspirational media figure. Netflix executives believed they were backing a globally recognizable personality whose name alone would guarantee attention, engagement, and prestige. Early projections assumed strong curiosity-driven viewership, followed by sustained audience loyalty. That loyalty never materialized. According to people who have seen the internal analytics, the show suffered from rapid viewer drop-off, meaning large numbers of viewers clicked on the first episode but failed to finish it. Even fewer continued on to subsequent episodes. In the streaming world, this metric is devastating. Netflix does not merely track who watches, it tracks how long they stay, whether they return, and if the content becomes part of habitual viewing. Meghan's show reportedly failed on all three fronts. Executives were particularly alarmed by the data coming in after the first week. While initial curiosity was present, retention declined sharply. Repeat viewing was minimal. Social media engagement failed to translate into sustained platform activity. In short, the show generated conversation, but not commitment. One insider described the internal mood bluntly. There was shock at how quickly interest evaporated. As the numbers continued to disappoint, Netflix reportedly reduced promotional efforts. Supporters of Meghan Markle have since claimed this lack of promotion doomed the series, arguing the platform failed to give it a fair chance. However, insiders dispute that narrative, saying Netflix follows a strict performance-based model. Marketing budgets are not emotional decisions. They are reactions to data. When early metrics fall below internal thresholds, further investment is pulled back automatically. This created a feedback loop that the show could not escape. Lower engagement led to reduced promotion, which further limited discovery, reinforcing the perception that the series lacked momentum. Within weeks, the project reportedly became difficult for executives to defend during internal performance reviews. Behind the scenes, a more uncomfortable conversation began to emerge. One Netflix executives were reluctant to voice publicly, but increasingly willing to discuss privately. The question was no longer whether the show could recover, but whether the Meghan Markle brand itself still carried the cultural weight it once did. Several insiders say executives began distinguishing between recognition and draw. Meghan Markle remains instantly recognizable, but recognition does not always translate into viewership. In an era where audiences are overwhelmed with content, curiosity clicks are meaningless without emotional connection. Netflix analysts reportedly concluded that viewers were no longer investing in Meghan's narrative. Not out of hostility, but out of fatigue. This fatigue proved more damaging than criticism. Negative reviews can still drive engagement. Indifference cannot. Internal summaries of viewer feedback allegedly described the show as distant, overly controlled, and lacking spontaneity. Some viewers felt it tried too hard to shape perception rather than simply tell a story. Others complained it offered little new insight, recycling themes audiences felt they had already heard repeatedly in interviews, documentaries, and podcasts. Executives also reportedly noted that the series failed to resonate beyond a narrow audience segment. Despite Meghan's global profile, international engagement underperformed. This raised red flags for a platform that relies on worldwide scalability to justify high-profile contracts. As Netflix continues tightening its content strategy, canceling even established shows that fail to meet cost-to-engagement ratios, Meghan's project increasingly stood out as an expensive gamble that had not paid off. At a time when the company is prioritizing binge-worthy, high-retention content, her series simply did not fit the model. By the time renewal discussions were expected to begin, insiders say the decision had already been made. There would be no second chance, no retooling, no public debate. Netflix would allow the project to fade quietly rather than risk further scrutiny. The silence that followed was deliberate. No statements were issued, no denial was offered, and crucially, no future Meghan-centered projects were added to Netflix's development slate. In Hollywood, that silence is often the clearest signal of all. For Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the implications are serious. Their Netflix deal was once hailed as one of the most ambitious post-royal media partnerships in modern history. It positioned them as storytellers, producers, and cultural commentators with the power to shape narratives on a global scale. Now, insiders suggest Netflix is reassessing whether that vision was ever realistic. This reported cancellation also fuels speculation about the Sussex's long-term viability in entertainment. While Prince Harry's personal storytelling has occasionally drawn interest, joint projects appear to be losing traction. Some insiders believe future collaborations, if any, may be scaled back significantly or redirected entirely. What makes this moment particularly damaging is timing. The cancellation arrives amid growing public skepticism, declining goodwill, and increasing competition for audience attention. Hollywood is no longer chasing celebrity. It is chasing engagement, and engagement is brutally honest. For Meghan Markle, this is not just about one show. It is about whether her media presence can evolve beyond controversy, reinvention, and curated vulnerability. Netflix's decision suggests the platform no longer believes that evolution will happen on its watch. And while supporters argue she was treated unfairly, the reality of streaming economics is unforgiving. Viewers decide quickly. Algorithms decide faster. And once a project falls out of favor, redemption is rare. As Netflix moves forward without her show, the message to the industry is unmistakable. Prestige names are no longer protected. Even duchesses are subject to the same cold metrics as everyone else. This may not be the end of Meghan Markle's media ambitions, but it is undeniably the end of a chapter she needed to succeed, and the fallout is only beginning. In the days following Netflix's quiet decision to abandon Meghan Markle's show, something even more revealing happened behind the scenes. The phone stopped ringing. According to multiple industry insiders, agents, producers, and executives who once eagerly floated new concepts tied to Meghan Markle suddenly went silent. Meetings that had been in discussion stalled indefinitely. Development emails went unanswered. Projects that had been described as early-stage promising were quietly shelved without explanation. This was not coincidence. It was calculation. Netflix's move, insiders say, sent a powerful signal across Hollywood. The Meghan Markle experiment was no longer a safe bet. Inside the company, the cancellation reportedly triggered a broader internal review of the Sussex partnership as a whole. While the original deal was framed as expansive and long-term, executives are now said to be reassessing whether the return on investment has justified the scale of the commitment. In private conversations, sources claim Netflix leadership has begun drawing clear distinctions between headline value and viewer value, a distinction Meghan's projects have struggled to bridge. One insider familiar with the internal discussions described the shift bluntly. The brand doesn't convert the way it used to. This reassessment has reportedly sparked uncomfortable conversations about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as separate media entities. While Meghan's lifestyle-focused project underperformed, some executives believe Harry's personal narratives, particularly those tied directly to his experiences within the royal family, still generate measurable interest. That distinction, sources say, is now shaping how future Sussex-related content is evaluated, if it is evaluated at all. Behind closed doors, there is growing acknowledgement that joint Sussex projects have lost their novelty. Early curiosity that once drove massive viewership has been replaced by skepticism, with audiences increasingly questioning whether new content offers genuine insight or simply repackages familiar grievances and themes. Executives reportedly worry that each new release now risks reinforcing audience fatigue rather than reigniting interest. Compounding the issue is the reputational risk. Netflix is acutely aware of how quickly online narratives can turn, and insiders say executives are wary of being perceived as overly invested in a figure whose public approval ratings appear unstable. In today's streaming environment, controversy does not always translate into clicks, especially when viewers feel emotionally disconnected. Several insiders point to internal sentiment analyses, reports that allegedly flagged a troubling trend. Audiences were no longer reacting strongly to Meghan Markle at all. Not positively, not negatively, simply disengaging. That disengagement has ripple effects beyond Netflix. Hollywood agents, according to sources, are increasingly cautious about attaching Meghan's name to new ventures without clear evidence of audience demand. While she remains famous, fame alone no longer guarantees funding, distribution, or patience. Studios want proof. Metrics, not headlines. This represents a sharp contrast to the atmosphere surrounding Meghan just a few years ago, when nearly every major platform appeared eager to partner with her. At that time, she symbolized disruption, modernity, and a fresh perspective on power and identity. Today, insiders say, she is viewed as overexposed yet under-delivering. A dangerous combination in an industry driven by novelty. The fallout has also reportedly intensified tension within the Sussex camp itself. While no public fractures have emerged, insiders suggest differing views on strategy have surfaced privately. Some believe the focus on controlled, image-conscious storytelling has backfired, creating content that feels distant rather than intimate. Others argue the problem lies not with Meghan's vision, but with an audience that has grown hostile and unforgiving. Netflix executives, however, appear uninterested in internal Sussex debates. Their concern is simple: performance. One source described a key internal meeting where Meghan's show was discussed alongside other underperforming titles. Unlike smaller projects, hers carried the added burden of expectation that had not been met. When comparisons were drawn, executives reportedly concluded that less expensive, less famous projects were delivering stronger engagement and higher completion rates. That comparison sealed the show's fate. What followed was a strategic withdrawal rather than a public confrontation. Netflix chose not to provoke backlash by issuing statements or engaging in spin. Instead, it allowed the project to disappear quietly, confident that attention would move elsewhere. In streaming, memory is short, and silence is often the most efficient exit. For Meghan Markle, this quiet erasure may prove more damaging than an outright public cancellation. There is no narrative to rebut, no statement to challenge, no controversy to reframe. The data stands on its own. More troubling for her future prospects is the perception that Hollywood has already moved on. Insiders say the industry is currently fixated on creators who feel raw, unpredictable, and culturally plugged in. Qualities audiences increasingly crave. Highly curated, image-managed content, once considered premium, is now often seen as sterile. That shift leaves Meghan in an awkward position. Her brand has been built on control, intentionality, and narrative precision. But the market is now rewarding messiness, humor, and relatability. Adapting to that shift would require a fundamental recalibration, one insiders are unsure she is willing to make. Meanwhile, questions continue to swirl around the remaining elements of the Sussex's Netflix deal. While no formal termination has been announced, insiders suggest future output may be limited, restructured, or quietly allowed to expire. Executives are reportedly reluctant to commit additional resources without compelling evidence that audience enthusiasm can be reignited. For Prince Harry, this moment may also represent a crossroads. Some industry figures believe his individual storytelling still holds emotional power, particularly when it departs from polished narratives and embraces vulnerability. Whether Netflix, or any major platform, is willing to explore that separately remains uncertain. What is clear is that the era of automatic greenlights for Sussex-branded content appears to be over. Publicly, Meghan Markle remains composed. Privately, insiders say the mood is far less confident. The cancellation of her show has forced an uncomfortable reckoning, not just with Netflix, but with the broader reality of an entertainment industry that has grown colder, faster, and relentlessly data-driven. This was supposed to be a reinvention. Instead, it became a warning. Hollywood does not wait. Audiences do not linger. And prestige without engagement is meaningless. Whether Meghan Markle can recalibrate, re-emerge, and reconnect with viewers remains an open question. But Netflix's decision has already answered another one. The platform no longer believes the risk is worth the reward. And in an industry built on momentum, that belief can be devastating.